Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for CAMC's Business Intelligence webinar series. Our first session in 2021, entitled Staffing and Recruitment Trends, Managing Talent During the Coronavirus Outbreak, is being brought to us by our lovely sponsors, Nutrien, Flexingate, Magna, and Numawa Express. As you may know from our previous webinars, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, where you will be able to ask your questions in either the general chat or in the Q&A section within the webinar. We will have our webinar attendees muted otherwise. First, we will be hearing from Terry Saw, President of the Top Notch Employment Services Incorporated. Top Notch Employment is a privately owned, full-service staffing company serving the Greater Toronto Area for the past 29 years. Top Notch Employment provides executive staffing services to an array of industries ranging from administrative, sales and marketing, accounting, IT, clerical, and general office. In addition to executive staffing, our strength lies in the recruitment within the warehousing, logistics, and order fulfillment areas. Terry, I am now going to pass the virtual reins to you. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Roy. Good morning, one and all. I'm really excited this morning to be joined by Kim Anderson, who is a strategic partner on the contracts of BMS Management Company, Farah Hussain, head of recruitment at Top Notch. So it's a pleasure for this opportunity to talk to my counterparts within the industry and also within the CAMC umbrella. And Royston, I want to say to CAMC, thanks for the opportunity. It is my expectation and hope that at the end of this of today's chit chat, there could be some valuable takeaways and recommendations, and perhaps also some best practices. Today, HR leaders are working around the clock, taking unprecedented measures to keep their employees safe and to ensure continuity of their business. They're navigating through new world of remote work, drafting new procedures, and keeping the workplace germ-free. Being able to pivot quickly will be essential to success and survival for many businesses. A good business strategy will get you through good times and bad times. This is a slide. I find this interesting. I mean, the quote is so direct, but I think what's more important from my perspective here is, what do you do in difficult times? Well, the general consensus of success has been to adjust your sail as per the wind's direction. Quickly adapt to the changing needs. For instance, a tailor making suits for people remodeled their business to make masks. Now, not everyone can do that, but at least some companies are going to be strategic and innovative enough to make the changes, whatever is necessary, to maintain the success and survival of that business. Today's general topic is staffing and recruitment trends and managing during the COVID-19 outbreak. And on the agenda, we have the impacts of COVID-19 to workplace and employment outlook, the changing role of HR, recruitment trends, virtual interview and work from home, talent management, and vendor management with Kim Anderson. I guess it will be fitting to start a conversation in recognizing the impacts of the pandemic to the workplace. So what we have noticed, and what's critical, the areas of modification of physical workplaces to ensure social distancing. That's nothing new. Most of you joining today would have had to make those changes in order to create a very safe social distancing working environment. Investments in enhanced technology services, including VPN, online meeting or data sharing platforms. Those became a significant deal and very successful and very convenient as well. Building culture outside the building, we notice, is also critical. And the reason we say this is that most organizations have a unique culture, and people operate and function within that culture. And now when there's a sudden shift, either by distancing or being away from the office, working from home, and so on and so forth, it's critical to recognize the importance of business culture of that organization for someone or employees to perform in a way that they're comfortable while trying to maintain the business culture, even being offsite. And COVID affected most sectors, specifically harder in certain areas like aviation, entertainment, rec centers, leisure, hospitality, tourism, non-essential retail stores, and so on and so forth. And also a reduction in planned investment for office spaces. What we found the main reasons for layoffs were closing of some businesses, sustaining losses in businesses, redundancies at certain jobs, cost reduction, and reduced operating hours of business. Modification of physical workplace to ensure social distancing includes, and not limited to, plexiglass, splitting shifts, catering lunches, acceleration in investments in new technologies, building the culture outside the building. And there may be a question asked. You may be wondering how the pandemic has affected top-notch employment. As mentioned before, we service a number of industries, from call centers to IT, accounting, and to a large extent, distribution centers, warehouses, logistics. And one of the reasons by default, I presume, that due to COVID, the warehousing and distribution and logistics sectors and manufacturing were deemed to be essential. As a result of that, we had to do a lot of work within the businesses, such as at Top Notch, we have a dedicated HR, a health and safety person, and we reach out to our clients directly, specifically, and physically to discuss best case scenarios and best practices to be operating within a warehouse setting, and to establish and create a number of new ideas that will mitigate and reduce the exposure of people to a possible virus. But of course, there are still going to be issues, but it is critical that those physical assessments be done as quickly as possible, and it should be a continued process. The next slide is just a quick summary of what the payroll has been since the pandemic hit. As you can see, early on when the pandemic hit, early 2020, there was a significant drop in payroll and employment and revenue. And as time went on, coming into October, there was a fairly significant increase or change of direction. And it shows basically that after when the initial COVID pandemic hit, everyone felt doom and gloom. But companies who pivoted quickly and who made changes quickly and who understood and who realized they had to do certain things, they did it. And then we had a change of direction there. And I thought perhaps in touching a bit based on our survey of the sectors that's hiring for the new year. And we assure you will agree, everyone, most of you will, that healthcare. I mean, whatever it happens to be, long-term care, hospitals, nurses, private care, whatever, healthcare is a big deal. And also retail will continue to thrive, clerks and cashiers, supervisors, digital marketing specialists. On the logistics, distribution, warehouse, general labor side, we see logistics and transportation to remain strong, warehousing, construction, superintendent, and some machine operators. We feel that because of the change in behavior of consumers doing more online shopping, we are confident to project and to predict and to say that this will continue to be, and it possibly may get stronger because the convenience of this whole new dimension of online shopping has taken on a complete different twist. And of course, the knowledge-based industries are always and will always remain strong in the IT, data, and banking sector. Something that's really important to discuss is the impacts of COVID-19 to the talent pool. We noticed that there has been a significant rise in contract and temporary positions instead of permanent positions. We also recognize that the government jumped in quickly, and there were two things that came up. Almost 9 million Canadians initially received the CERB, which is the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program, which supported eligible businesses for up to 75% of employee salaries in order to prevent further job losses. Of course, that depended on a percentage of revenue drop and so on and so forth. My comment is that with respect to the government subsidy, that in a way was very helpful, but it also had some negative impacts, especially at the entry-level positions where people had to weigh the difference between the couch and going out there, jumping on a bus or traveling with people to go to work, the possible risk of exposure. It seemed to me that a lot of people, and this is not me saying this. This is most people in the industry, a significant amount of people and employers will tell you that that benefit, although it was a good thing, it did have some negative impacts. And also, we find that retention of candidates will always be a struggle. And currently, as I mentioned, certain benefits is one of them. Also, the increased competition in the marketplace. Candidates are often declining jobs to go to other companies just for a difference of 25 to 50 cents per hour. This is especially reflective of the industrial and manufacturing sectors. And we notice candidates are focusing on job security and longer contracts as opposed to current pay. Health and safety concern is key because people want to be sure where they're going to work is safe, and they would rather give up a couple of dollars in pay to ensure that their safety is of primary concern. And child care needs come into play as well, where people are saying, well, you know what, now we need to take care of our children, and we will no longer work because we'll get that subsidy, that support from the government. A couple of things that is not on this slide, but I want to mention that Canada depended heavily over the years on new immigrants coming in to fill those distribution center warehouse jobs, the retail jobs. And because of COVID, there has been an absolute complete stop of new immigrants to Canada. The policy of Canada is to increase the numbers, but no one knows when that's going to happen. So we have to be quite aware of the impact of immigration and jobs and how they fit in the marketplace. We also recognize that HR are facing unique challenges when it comes to staffing and recruitment. What is important is how they respond, thrive, and survive to emerge as a more competitive company. Spot opportunities for growth and change. The pandemic caused us to reevaluate, streamline some of our recruitment processes to allow for a better candidate experience. Learning and emerging, we as a team had to learn new ways to operate to remain competitive. For example, using virtual job fairs as opposed to physical. Preparing for and shaping a new normal. While some employees return to work on site, others may continue to work remotely. And here again, we are saying that the hybrid model of working from home and working back on site will likely be a permanent model for a long time. We also like to talk a little bit, as my closing slide, on the branding of your company and managing the employer, managing your brand. Most companies have spent a lot of money, time, focus, and commitment in establishing and maintaining their brand. With a sudden disruption, such as COVID, companies had to make some quick changes and to recognize that there must be a solid plan to manage your employment brand, and measure employee sentiment will be vital. Whatever people feel are necessary or required or important to keep the employee engaged and for the employee to always function and operate with their employer's brand in mind, that is also crucial. I appreciate the fact and the time that I had to present from my side. I would now like to introduce my colleague, Farah Hussein. Farah is head of recruitment at Top Notch Executive Staffing, and she's the most appropriate person to talk on the following slides. Farah?
Thank you, Terry. So talent management. The role of HR has changed significantly as a result of the pandemic. HR must adjust their priorities in order to deliver a better employee experience. Key focus areas will include increased flexibility, so adopting flexible work hour arrangements to accommodate demands arising due to working from home, also reorganization of workplace schedules as well. Another point is adoption of new technologies. So designing for resilience will mean investing in new technologies that will allow you to better manage your recruitment and selection process and help you to fill placements faster, along with minimizing those manual processes such as timesheet submission. The rollout of new technologies, including new software and collaborative tools, will require buy-in from all levels in your company.
Anybody besides Farah, because I can hear voices.
Other focus areas will include finding and hiring the right people. The way that we source candidates has changed. In recent months, we've been hosting virtual job fairs, which allow us to interview a group of candidates and also do one-on-one interviews. There has also been a shift as to where we find our candidates now. More and more of our openings are from our work from home. So recruitment of candidates is no longer restricted to a specific location. There is now more of a need for customer service support roles, which allow you to work from home in industries such as banking, e-commerce, and so on. The pool for customer service talent has gotten bigger, we've noticed, as layoffs have progressed. Optimizing the candidate experience. So communication will be key to retaining and engaging talent, and is important now more than ever given the pandemic. Candidates want to know where they are in each step of the process. You'll need to determine the frequency of communication, as well as ways to communicate with candidates throughout the recruitment cycle, from updating candidates on the status of their application to various parts of the onboarding process. Virtual interviewing. So due to social distancing measures, we are seeing a shift to employers conducting interviews virtually rather than face-to-face. So one of the benefits to virtual interviews is that they are often easier to arrange and can assist with expediting the hiring process, eliminating that need to coordinate dates, times, and locations for an interview, which can be a very time-consuming process. Interviews can be recorded rather than conducted in real time, and often can be completed at the candidate's convenience. Candidates are also more likely to attend virtual interviews, decreasing the number of no-shows. It is important that employers realize that candidates may be nervous, as many candidates are completing virtual interviews for the first time and may have difficulty adjusting to the new medium. To reduce candidate stress, employers should be sure to communicate the expectations for the interview in advance. It might be helpful to send your candidates an outline of what to expect during the process, including the expected duration, as well as format of the interview. Work from home. So many companies have repositioned their workforce to work from home as a result of COVID-19. Employees can avoid long travels, as well as employers can achieve cost savings as office space may no longer be needed. Employers can test the waters of the work from home model by having some employees work from home before going fully remote. Work from home. So here are some of the challenges arising from the work from home arrangement. Managing remote workers without micromanaging. So employers may feel the need to check in with employees on a frequent basis to ensure that they're being productive. However, it is much more effective to set goals with your employees and monitor their progress towards these goals. They can also do daily check-ins with employees. Policies regarding work from home conduct, absence reporting procedures should be implemented, outlining expectations and guidelines for working outside of the office. This can eliminate non-productive behaviors as employees will already know what is expected of them. Mental health, burnout, and isolation. So working from home over time can cause workers to feel disconnected. They may be tempted to work longer hours, leading to burnout. Employers need to recognize signs of fatigue and burnout. It is very important to be there for your employees, as many of them may be facing stressful situations, from coordinating childcare to financial strains. Poor ergonomics. Many home offices are not set up for the work from home arrangement. Employees are finding themselves working in non-static positions for many hours, leading to ergonomic strains. So these are some of the challenges. Making work from home work. So getting the team to work collaboratively is one way to help them feel like they're not in it alone. Tools such as Microsoft Teams can allow for the sharing of information, chats, and conferencing. ZipWhip is another handy tool which we've used to communicate with our candidates and workers, which allows you to text using your business landline, which can be especially helpful if you are away from the office. Collaborative tools will be important in maintaining employee engagement. Other tips include encouraging and reminding your employees to take regular breaks, as well as educating employees on proper ergonomics. So these are some tips with respect to ergonomics. So some of the key points here to consider is postures. So over a long duration of time, employees may be in very static positions. So it's very important to invest in various accessories, including laptop stands, risers, and so on, just to assist with the work from home. So I'd like to hand it over to Kim. She's going to go over vendor management.
Thanks, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me and you can see me. So thank you, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. And thank you, Terry, for sharing the spotlight with me. And of course, Kamsi for holding the webinar. Everything that you have shared so far has been absolute bang on when it comes to, the impacts we're dealing with COVID, et cetera. So I'm really proud to tell you all a little bit about my company today. At Contracts, we provide a one-stop shop for our clients when it comes to the staffing industry, managing multiple agencies at peak times where more staff is needed, particularly now during COVID, as well as providing our clients with staffing and procurement expertise. That's where we fit in. We're women-owned, and as you can see by the badges on this slide, we've made Canada's fastest growing top 500 companies for 3 years in a row. We've got excellent relationships with hundreds of suppliers, mainly in Canada, but also in the US. So when a client is interested in our business, we usually deal with the procurement or HR teams. We don't replace procurement. We really work together as a team. Contracts manages multiple agencies and staffing demand for our clients. We take the time to understand our clients' business and current processes. Where are they feeling pain in this industry? Then our job is to minimize and ultimately eradicate that pain. You know, is it the fact that they can't find the talent they need from the agencies they're working with? Maybe they're operating with crazy peaks in demand. And we see that, you know, particularly in the warehousing during COVID right now. Maybe they're not paying their agencies because they can't validate the time that they've worked, or they're paying, when they look back, are they paying market price or not for their workers? And perhaps they even have such manual processes that it can take forever to organize and validate the invoices. And then they pay their suppliers late, the suppliers don't want to work with them, etc. So there's a number of different pain points, and we help our clients streamline their processes while working, you know, and increasing the services we help with them. We help them understand the risks with co-employment. We provide core metrics and reporting that they share back to the business. So if you think about this, right, if a company's got a large pool or an ongoing contingent worker requirement, their procurement or HR team will be asked by the business to add a vendor here and there because perhaps they did a good job for someone else. Maybe their neighbor happens to own a staffing agency, or before COVID, they may have met someone on the golf course who they would like to hire, but he or she will only work through a particular agency. So this means procurement ends up negotiating contract after contract, chewing up their time, and to end up with really staffing 1 or 2 people. So the effort here is far greater than the reward. These are all situations where we can add huge value. We will negotiate with the supplier, hold them to task with a scorecard or quarterly assessment, and if they're not performing, we find an alternate supplier to support the client. Procurement will then, or HR, it depends on who you typically work with, will then have time to bring greater value to their business because they have the time to understand what their business is buying and can offer strategic solutions versus being those hamsters on the wheel. At the end of the day, our job is to make our clients look good. So our business model is very simple, right? We negotiate, sign an agreement with our client, and then the terms and conditions of that agreement is flowed down to the suppliers or agencies. We then become the master supplier. All supply agreements are then between contracts and the staffing agency. So our clients love 2 things about our model. Number 1, we don't charge them for our service. We take a tiny cut from the supplier's margin, so they're getting great service and don't have to pay for it. And 2, the fact that we're not associated with any agency, but that we're neutral. So we don't have a preference on which agency fills the role. This way, the best agencies win based on their performance, and our suppliers get the best candidates. So as you can see by the graphic, we streamline and make this area of our client's business easy. We manage vendors who are IT, admin, light industrial. It doesn't matter, right? It's the same model for all of them. And because we're not a mammoth business, we're agile, innovative, and extremely customer focused and deliver great experiences. So now I also want to tell you a little bit about Connexus, right? So Connexus is a sister company to Contracts. Both have the same ownership structure, and Connexus is a very simple, easy to use vendor management system, or VMS, that complements the contract process. So I've worked with other VMSs in the past, and many of them are so convoluted that it takes you forever to figure out the basic stuff. And you're forever trying to figure out how to do a requisition, etc. So Connexus is simple, it's straightforward, and it's very easy to use. You can easily create a requisition for your staffing needs, send it out to the agencies who will then submit their candidates in. If you find a person you like, you then flip that requisition to a contract. Your temp can then enter time and any expenses they may have into the system quickly and easily. It triggers an email to the manager to approve the time. Invoices are generated from that approved time within Connexus to the client. And then once the client pays us, we then pay the supplier with a subsequent invoice that's generated from Connexus. It's a very slick and easy to use system and can quickly automate a manual process and very reasonably priced. If you go on the link attached here, you can schedule a demo and one of my business partners will take you through the tool and answer all your questions. The good thing about Connexus is that if you don't want everything that contracts brings and just want a tool, bingo, you can do that too, and vice versa. So I hope you found this interesting. And if you're looking for further information, please let CAMC know and we can get you what you need. I know we want to now do a question and answer period. So I'm going to hand it back to Roy for question and answers, and he'll moderate the session. And hoping we can answer between the three of us here today, we can answer the questions that you have got based on Terry's, Farah's, and my presentation.
Thank you so much to everyone involved in our presentation today. So Farah, Terry, Kim, thank you so much for your inputs here. So as Kim said, at this time, we will be taking questions in both our general chat as well as our Q&A section. If you have any questions that are directed to a specific individual, please just put that individual's name within your question so that we can direct it appropriately. But with that said, let me take a look and see if there are any questions right now. Let me see. It's our first one for the year, so, oh, here we go. This question seems to be for all panelists. Are there any ideas on how to interview talent who doesn't necessarily have access to anything other than a phone call? So you wouldn't be able to necessarily meet them face to face or by video. What would happen then?
Terry here. Farah, this might be appropriate for you because you're on the ground, so to speak. But from my perspective, to Lee, I would say it depends on the position you're hiring or interviewing for. If it's a position that is fairly junior, entry level, that you can get away with just a cell phone or a phone call, that's fine. But if it's something a little bit more senior that requires a little bit more complexity, then you will have to come up with different ideas. So Farah, any suggestions?
Yeah, well, most of us have cell phones. So, I mean, we try to work with our candidates, based on what mobile devices or like technology they have. So it really depends on, their access to technology, and not everybody has the same access. So, we have experienced this on a few rare occasions, and what we've been able to do is, go to our client and say, this is a situation, this person does not have access to any other technologies, no mobile devices, and usually, given the difficulty of this pandemic, they're usually able to make accommodations for those cases. So it really is an individual basis type of thing that we'd have to look at it.
Okay. In that case, does the candidate not necessarily having access to specific technologies end up being a detriment? Should it be counted against them in terms of the interview process, whether or not they do make a good candidate?
I would say, Well, it really depends on the type of position too. I mean, say if the position involves somebody who is, tech savvy, for them not to be able to figure it out. I mean, it could play, but in most instances, we try to work with the candidate based on what they have. Terry, would you be able to shed some light on this?
With respect to the same question about what
Yeah,
other
the same question. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you know what? To be quite honest, Farah, I mean, we can try to be creative, but really, we are caught in a very difficult situation. We don't want to meet the person face to face for obvious reasons, and the person only has a cell phone. You can talk to them on the phone. It probably boils down to one thing here, and that if the candidate is very interested, he or she will make an attempt to be able to give the client or the employer an opportunity to have a virtual interview. And if that person is not serious enough, the average person today will be able somehow to have some relationship with somebody that they can have access. And quite frankly, I mean, apart from phone calls today, the only other way you could decide on a candidate is by a video interview. Now, it's not ideal, but at least it gives you some degree of comfort. The difficulties will always be problematic because of body language, and on the employee side, or the potential employee, a sense of nervousness. But the final answer would be that if the client is satisfied with hiring the person based on the phone call, is fine. If not, then the recommendation would be, if you're serious enough about getting interviewed, then go find yourself someone who will assist you in having a virtual call.
And Terry, this is Kim. So I think, a lot of people also have FaceTime, right? And if they don't, they've got Messenger that's got video option. If they've got a Google phone, I think you can do that. And like you say, it's not ideal, but at least it lets you look at the candidate, right? It lets you see that it's the right person that you're putting in the job. So you can actually see their face.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So I think most people do. I know even the kids today have all got phones, right? So
This just reminds me of when my colleagues and my friends were sending out resumes, and we looked at resume templates, and before we would almost look down on the resumes that included sort of a headshot of the employee, but now that seems a little bit more conducive, seeing as now everything is moving virtual. It can be an employee's first look. Now, let me see. We do have a few more questions in. And this one is for all panelists. It asks, do you think a pre-recorded video screening software helps in initial screening in any way, in case there are a huge number of applicants?
Kim, you deal with a large volume, especially for the projects we're working on right now. You might be best to talk about the different screening softwares that you guys use.
yeah, I mean, our clients particularly will be the ones doing the interview, right? So when we say, pre-recorded, I don't know what that means, but I know that we do have, our clients do have the ability to send out a link for their candidates. They go on, they do their interview, they answer questions that are set up and already in there. And that seems to be very effective. But, as Farah talked about, some people are very nervous doing that. And so they don't generally come off at their best all the time. Right. So it depends on the person. It depends on how comfortable they are with technology. If you've got, a warehouse person, for example, they may not be as comfortable doing that. Right. Whereas if you've got someone who's maybe a CSR, they may be fine with it. Right. Or someone who's an admin person, they're fine with it. I think it depends on the person. But, I would say that it works. And sometimes, you know, now that we're in COVID and we're not able to get out face to face, we have to make adjustments, right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly. And also to add to that, I mean, with many of the recording software, I mean, it allows you or the candidate to re-record an answer. You know, if they felt like their initial response was not strong enough, they can always go back and like re-record their answer. So that's another like key advantage to the new software, including HireVue. HireVue is a main one as well.
Well, what I want to add there, Farah, I mean, the question, the last line, in case there are a huge number of applicants, tells me that the person asking this question it possibly deals with a large number of applicants, perhaps. And in that case, I just want to say we at Top Notch, we have placed well over 100 employees over the past 3 to 4 months. And we use a particular software for that. It's very independent, very automatic, very user-friendly, and we'll be happy to share that information going forward with you. And Roy, before you jump to the next question, would you mind if I make a quick comment on one of the questions?
Sure thing.
So Ash K is asking, my question is for Kim. I'm not Kim, but I'm just speaking before Kim responds. First of all, thank you. Okay, I want to know how a staffing agency be associated with you or look into some positions you're looking for your clients. What I want to say here, this is not a diversity conference today, but I love to bring supply diversity into play because you know what? I live and I breathe this stuff. And you know, with Kim's company, what's interesting is that it really creates a platform of opportunities for smaller companies, particularly women-owned or minority-owned or otherwise, because contracts is able to attract the big boys, so to speak. And then now Kim goes out and say, well, look, let's try to include some of these qualified, certified suppliers so the client can get the service they need, plus they also get the spend, and everything works hunky-dory. So I just want to kind of throw that in if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. So, you know, there are a number of our clients who want to track the diversity spend, right? So we are always looking for those suppliers that are certified diverse. And like you say, you know, we have the ability that the requisitions go out and there's an opportunity for those suppliers of all walks of life, you know, all the different suppliers to respond in. And there's very often you'll get those smaller suppliers that are more innovative. They're able to find the candidates with those niche skills that are needed because they're not dealing in so much volume, right? So if a supplier wants to reach out, absolutely, you know, come forward, send me an email. We'll add you to the list when there's that opportunity. You know, we will certainly sign you up and get you, you know, on with a new client. I'd like to know what your niche skills are. I like to know how different you are from, you know, the rest of the suppliers. And that gives me an edge when I'm promoting you as a supplier to our clients.
Okay, lovely. So it's fantastic that you're making yourself available in that way, Kim. Thank you so much.
For CAMC suppliers and people, anytime with the diversity.
Thank you. So I do see a quick question, but I believe that it's an open-ended one as well. And it is from our Q&A section asking, what are the best ways to have a virtual onboarding? So any sort of tips that you're able to provide there?
Farah?
So with virtual onboarding, I would say, well, Top Notch, we've had to kind of shift gears. Years ago, we would be more of a like manual. It would be more manual in that, you know, it was all paper. And these days we are going more paperless. So we have taken steps to go more digital, including converting our applications to fillable forms, making it easier for candidates to fill out. So that has definitely been one step that we've taken to manage the virtual onboarding process. Another way that, I mean, along the onboarding process, candidates have a lot of questions, and it's not always possible to, be available by phone or by email all the time. So we use a program called ZipWhip, and it allows us to kind of text candidates and, remind them to do things like fill out such and such forms and whatnot. So it's all about communication when it comes to virtual onboarding, I think, because you're not able to see the person in a like face-to-face context. So communication will be key.
And then, if the candidate needs a computer or they need a specific type of technology, right, that's sent on ahead of time with along with some job aids, right, that they can then access, and that helps with the onboarding.
Exactly. So yeah, once again, communication, sending them a lot of resources as well, and being there for them throughout the process.
And people to call, right? They need to know who to reach out to if I'm stuck, if I can't access, I can't get in, the password they gave me is wrong. What do I do? Where do I go? So that information, like you say, Farah, communication's key here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, lovely. So we do still have time for a few more questions. Thank you all for being able to answer. And one of the next questions that I see here are, how are employers' policies being affected by employees having to work from home? And this seems to be pertaining specifically to confidentiality. And I see that in the general chat. Thank you. Where's the question? And this is open to all of our panelists.
I don't see the question on my screen.
Okay, sure thing. I'll just send that to you into the all panelists chat so that you're able to view it as well.
Yeah, okay.
So how would an employer be able to keep up certain policies when employees are working from home? And confidentiality is obviously one of the most important ones. If we're able to touch base on that, that would be lovely.
This is a tough one.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Terry. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I would like to say that first of all, when an employee has signed on with the employer prior to COVID, there would have been a policy signed to that effect. Now, with the shifting to home, and I'm assuming this is someone who is now shifting to work remotely somewhere, then it is critical. The policy remains in force, but it's critical that the employee is advised once again that he or she has signed a confidentiality statement and policy, and that the expectation is that policy remains to be an absolute must at all times. In addition to that, depending on the sensitivity and the confidential nature of one's work, they must have a place to work that information that they're disseminating or receiving is to be kept very, very confidential. So those are my two critical areas that I would talk about. The continuity of the confidential policy that has been signed that extends to home. And also, in addition to that, that the employee makes every reasonable effort to protect data, information, correspondence, either in writing or virtually, giving the full protection at all times.
Yeah, and I'll sort of add to that. It really is a risk when you've got more people working from home, because you're not there to supervise and make sure that they're doing things right all the time. So I think, regular team meetings with your, contract labor, reinforcing what is confidential. You've got some people that you'll hire that say, oh, I didn't think that there was a problem with me sharing that. So it's reinforcing what is confidential to your company, and that information, reinforcing with them all the time. Remember, don't share this, or this is confidential, or please be aware who you're sending emails to. When you're sending emails to everyone, don't just type in the word David and pick the top guy, right? It could go to the wrong David, for example. So I think there's common sense that goes with it, as well as ensuring and keeping on top of your temp labor as well.
And Farah, do you have anything to add? If not, we can move on to the next question.
Yep. So with confidentiality, I mean, that is something that is highlighted in our work from home policies. So it's just crucial that before any employers embark on the work from home style of working, that they implement procedures and policies, and they it may be in their application a confidentiality clause, but it's worth it to repeat it once again in a work from home agreement, where it lays out everything from the expectations for the work from home, absence reporting procedures, down to confidentiality. So it's always good to reinforce this in your application and your policies.
Okay, lovely. Now, looking at our next question, this seems to actually be a follow-up, coming back to our technology question from before. Just as a reminder, the technology question was regarding potential candidates for a job or position in which they only have access to a cell phone. So, for Indigenous communities that are affected by lockdown, they don't necessarily have access to specific technologies. This person lists out cell phones, no access to buses. How should an employer handle a candidate in that situation?
It's really a good question, and it's also a challenging answer. And the reason why I say this is that any community that's affected with a limitation to cell phone and related technology, it is always going to be difficult, because most of the remote work today entails the use of technology in some way, shape, or form. And perhaps the only bright light could be that one has to look deep at companies who may have work that can be done remotely and is not affected by whether you have technology or not. And that's speaking purely from my own limited experience, but of course, I'm sure others may have their own ideas or suggestions. But yes, indeed, these are communities we must look at, and we must try our very best to see how we can help in whatever way. And look, I'm the first to help if I can. And it's a question that I will continue to ponder even after this webinar.
Right. It seems like a short question, but the answer to it can get complicated. I definitely understand that. And if we can have our other panelists weigh in. If not, there are plenty of other questions.
I mean, I don't have much more to add other than, if there's a community like that, is there a centralized phone or a centralized computer, maybe, that they could go to that might help? I don't know. As Terry said, this is a good one to ponder on. And maybe, this is an opportunity. When you get questions like this, it's an opportunity to think a little bit more out of the box.
Correct.
And come up with some ideas for people, right? So I think this is a good one to think on.
Yeah, I agree. There's much that can be done. I think that maybe if a certain community is facing a certain problem, they can go to their local MP and see what can be done, and work with the client to come to a sense of understanding, that these people are not able to access certain things, but how can we do this in an alternative manner that will benefit like all parties. So yeah, definitely something to ponder. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. Let's see. A question that came up earlier is how far do you think organizations are going to make mental wellness a priority for employees? As we all know, burnout is something that's occurring for not just employees, but Canadians everywhere. How important do you think it is to address it as an employer?
That's a really good question, Royster. That's a question that's very dear to my heart. And the reason I'm saying that is I want to be the first to admit that I have been personally affected. I wouldn't say significantly, but affected to a point of discomfort by this pandemic, because I'm a very social person. All right, I like to interact, to socialize, to do things, and now I feel like I live in a prison. I'm very fortunate that I'm involved in a business where we are deemed to be essential, so I get to come to the office back and forth every day. But what I do as an employer, and this would not necessarily apply to everyone, it will apply for those who have direct connection with their employees on a daily basis. In recognizing that, well, first of all, most of my employees with this company have been here for a long time, some of them 25, 26, 27, 28 years. And what I do is I go about and I ask them directly and specifically, how are you doing? What's bothering you? Do you feel comfortable? And what we did, we went ahead, we bought a treadmill and put it in a different office, and one at a time to maintain social distancing. Employees are encouraged to leave their workstation and go for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Go to the treadmill, watch some TV, and come back when you feel better. Now, for employees who work from home, how does an employer take control of their mental health? I think what's critical is that employers make it a point, perhaps as a dedicated new position within their company, to be calling on their employees on a regular basis and checking with them and see if there's any other way you can support them. Ask direct questions and try to get the direct answers. And most importantly, before it becomes really bad, to a burnout situation, or it comes to a point of because it falls on the health and safety, you really want to be on top of that. You want the employee to know that, hey, as an employer, I care. I really care about your well-being, and I want to do whatever I can do to make sure you're well and that you're comfortable. And if there's something bothering you, the platform is open. We will not misinterpret it because we completely understand, because I myself, I'm affected. And employees who get that support are by far more productive. You know why? Because you know you're working for a company that trusts you, and a company who's there to stand by you, stand with you, and give you the help that you need. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input, Terry. Now we're coming up to the end of our webinar here. If we have any final comments before we do our conclusion, we're open to them now from our panelists.
I just want to say to Kim, to Farah, Roy, to you, and to everyone who attended today. I personally appreciate the fact that you took the time to attend, and I really hope that at the end of it, there's some value to us spending some time today, and I truly appreciate the opportunity in having be a part of this process.
And I can ditto that, Terry. Everything that that you've said. And the health and wellness question at the end certainly hit home again for me. I don't think we have seen anywhere near the impact that COVID is going to have on our friends and our relatives and our employees. And I think as humans and as humanity, what we need to do is reach out to those loved ones that are ours, whether they're employees, whether they're friends, whatever they are, and really take the time to understand what's going on. I was personally affected earlier on in the year, last year, with a good friend of mine who ended up passing away. And I really think it was to do with with a mental health issue that I had no clue about. And I sit there every day and I think about that. How could I have done more? So it's not just to your employees, it's to humanity as a whole and those people that you know. So there you go. That's my last comment on that. So thank you very much again, everyone.
Thank you so much. Now, if we can just move quickly to the next slide.
I don't have the next slide. This was my last one, questions.
All right, in that case, I'll make that happen on my side. There we go. We'd like to thank all of our attendees today, as well as our webinar sponsors once again. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to Terry, Farah, and Kim for your inputs here. Our sponsors today, Nutrient, Flexingate, Magna and Numala Express. We wouldn't have been able to make this webinar series without you. You can join us for our next webinar regarding free trade agreements, using them to expand your business. And if you have any questions regarding our next webinar, you can connect with myself, Roy Singh, or with Vandana Srinivasan using the emails provided there. If you have any other questions for our panelists today, you can email them to us and we can forward it on to them so that you're able to connect. But thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.